Hi everyone, this is Adam at the Astro Imaging channel. Today's topic is imaging in light polluted skies, and I hope you've never experienced it, but a lot of us probably have. Um, the first thing I want to show you is, and I'm going to do a lot of, I'm going to show you some websites tonight. You could probably Google them yourselves. I'm going to try and post a link as I go so that you can get to them. But this is one of the websites that I use to find darker skies or just to figure out exactly what my skies are like. I'm screen sharing, so bear with me. And you can probably... All right, there you go. Can you guys see the Dark Sky Finder?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is the Dark Sky Finder website, jshine.net. I always Google Dark Sky Finder and I get to it. And this is my general region that I live in. In the center is Scranton, PA, which is where I live in, and I live within Scranton. And you can see over on the left, you just hit a little bit of the white zone that's attached to New York City, going down the Hudson River. And you just see a big variety. And of course, white is brightest sky, red zone a little bit dimmer, or excuse me, a little bit less light pollution. Orange is better, yellow's even better than that, then green, then blue. And actually over here on the left, you see a little patch of black sky. And if I drag it further, that is actually very close to Cherry Springs State Park, which is said to be the darkest sky on the East Coast. And one day I'd love to drive there. But for now, I'm stuck in this red zone. My dark sky site is actually in a yellow zone, and our club's observatory is even in a yellow zone as well. It used to be very dark when they built it. It's not quite as dark as it used to be. But I use this website if I want to find a way or a direction to drive to darker skies. And you can pretty much just zoom right in and see, do you have to drive east, west, north, or south, and pretty much get an idea. Or just see what you're dealing with. If you're considering buying a telescope and you say, well, what am I starting in a good spot or no? So that's basically what this website's good for. And this other website I'm going to start right off by showing you, because this is actually Samir Karusi has compiled some of the best information on imaging and light polluted skies that I've found, and I always end up on his website whenever whenever I'm interested in any of this. And one of the best things that one of the best tools that he has on his website is a way to use your DSLR to measure your sky fog. And he basically uses a simple equation. You take an exposure and you see how long it takes to get it to mid-histogram at a particular ISO, and that tells you your visual limiting magnitude and gives you the basics of your sky background. It's pretty basic. There really isn't any complex math. But if you start to see exactly what you're up against, and if you want to quantify your light pollution, it's a great place to do it. So, that said, I'm going to take back the screen. I think I'm going to take back the screen. Okay, and right there, can you guys see my Photoshop window and an Astro Image on there?
Yep.
Okay, so this is just a recent image that I've taken. This was completely taken within my red zone. This is the Cave Nebula, and this is actually a very difficult target. One of the techniques that I use to image and light pollution is either using narrowband filters or narrowband in combination with RGB filters. But I'm kind of going to get into that throughout the conversation, but I just want to show you this because I'm pretty proud of this. I didn't think that this was achievable, really, from my light polluted area. In fact, the last image I took with my DSLR camera was this, and I kind of just didn't have luck with it. It's just such a dim target that I was happy to pull out that much nebula. But so I've got that. I'm sorry, I'm popping around trying to pull the screen back. Alright, so I have that on my screen. And basically, going back to Sameer's website, first of all, you can quantify your sky fog with a basic DSLR camera. When you quantify your sky fog, or after you quantify your sky fog, you can plug that into a mathematical formula to figure out exactly how long it would take you to image at a light polluted site to get an equivalent image at a dark site. And based on the magnitude, your visual limiting magnitude, you end up, the numbers get pretty intimidating. And I'm just going to summarize really quickly without spelling a lot of it out. But Sameer uses a specific example where his suburban site is 3 stellar magnitudes brighter than his dark site. And the numbers he gives. I'm sorry, I hear some.
Just a reminder to everybody that if you're not actually speaking, it's probably a real good idea to turn yourself on mute so that no background noise can get in there and interrupt the flow of things. Also, don't forget, if you're new to this particular thing, over in Q&A and chat, there's a place for everybody to make comments and ask questions and stuff, and Adam will stop every now and then and try to answer those questions. Okay, but mute yourself if you haven't yet, okay? And I'm going to mute myself right now.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, I can't tell where the sounds are coming from, so that's why when there's any interference, it gets a little tough to sort out. So basically, Sameer's example is 3 stellar magnitudes difference, and from his dark site, it takes a 2-minute exposure to equal a 30-minute exposure in suburbia. Take that to the next level, because we all look at it the same way. You double your exposures, you reduce the noise by the square root of that, or the number of exposures. So 16-minute exposures, dark site, 14-hour exposures in suburbia. Take that further, 64 minutes exposure, so about an hour at a dark site, 16 hours in suburbia. The numbers are kind of stacked against you if you're imaging from a light polluted site. At that point, at that 1 hour point, you are better putting all of your gear into your car, driving out to the dark site, taking your photographs for an hour, coming back home. You'll have a better image. That said, that's not for all of us. We're probably going to do what we can to battle out the light pollution in our homes. Maybe you have kids and you can't leave home. That's my case. I built the observatory partially for that reason. But as you start to do that math, what you end up realizing is that light pollution behaves a lot like noise. Noise decreases with the number of exposures, and light behaves very, very similarly. And in the same way, you overcome light pollution with the same techniques you do to increase your signal-to-noise ratio. And the basic one is faster optics. And if you use faster optics, all things the same, of course, which you can never have the faster optics debate without all things being similar, but if you use faster optics, you're increasing your signal-to-noise ratio faster, and you are separating your actual signal, and when I say signal, your actual object signal, that signal that's coming from the object you're trying to target, away from the signal that is coming from the light pollution. And in the typical SNR ratio, light pollution is on the signal side. So you are integrating that. So light pollution, although it behaves, although in some senses it doesn't adequately get described by the signal to noise ratio, it does behave a lot like that, and time is the best. Excuse me, and time is one of the ways to overcome that, along with faster optics. So you can, as I said, just integrate through it with those faster optics. After those two things, you're going to get into more hardware-based ways to do it, and that's a matter of filters. Depending on whether you're using RGB or monochromatic, an RGB or a monochromatic sensor, you're going to have a couple options of filters. With DSLRs, for the most part, your filter options are the same, but for DSLRs, you're basically your best initial option is going to be a light pollution suppression filter. I liked the Hutech IDAS LPS. The version that I used was version 2, and at this point I think they're up to version 4. That's a very good filter. Other people have used the Astronomic CLS filter, and I have no experience with the CLS filter, but the one thing that I will say is I've never had issues color balancing my images taken with the IDAS filter, and I've seen a lot of people having issues color balancing with the CLS filter. It might just be me noticing something that wasn't there, but at the same time I kind of saw that consistently, and I even saw some people struggling a bit more with the newer IDAS V4 than the older one, and just consider that my own hearsay for now, but that's something I kind of noticed, and I just in general like the IDAS LPS V2, in case you care what I think in regards to that. So that's basically your first option when it comes to some sort of filter to help you get through the light pollution. And I'm speaking specifically about OSCs right now, or DSLRs, you can use H-alpha filters. DSLRs have clip-in H-alpha filters, and I've used one. I think the one that I used was 12 nanometers. It was the Astronomic clip-in. And while you are limited by the Bayer matrix, the H-alpha filters really do help you pick up a lot of the emission nebula. And with proper processing, you can strip that out and re-add it to your RGB. Or you can just strip it out and present it as a monochromatic image. I'm sorry, I'm also reading the comments on the side too, but Robert's saying that he had issues with the CLS, always had a bluish tint, and that's what I've noticed, yes. And galaxies in particular, yes. So that was kind of what I was noticing, and I'm glad somebody else had noticed the same. So that the light pollution suppression filters are your initial option. Then you get to the H-alpha filters, and you have a few ways of using them, presenting them as just pure monochromatic or reincorporating them into an RGB image. And if you're using a monochromatic camera, then you can treat the narrowband filters in the same way, and you have a couple options. You can either shoot H-alpha, for example, shoot O3, shoot S2, and incorporate those 3 color channels whichever way you want and whatever color balance you want. At the same time, if you like RGB, you can take the H-alpha and then incorporate it into just the RGB. And those are kind of the basic techniques to get through light pollution using filters. And I might just reiterate a little bit of that towards the end, but I want to go through some basic techniques that it comes specifically when you're selecting your targets. First of all, objects that are high in the sky are going to pass directly overhead. Definitely the best way to go. It'll limit the gradients, it'll limit the amount of atmosphere it's passing through, and in general, you're just going to have an easier time with it. That's not to say you can always pick those targets, but if you are choosing your targets, and you can't choose between two, that's the best way to help pick it. Also, select from bright objects. Again, signal-to-noise ratio, the more signal that's there, the more it's going to separate. So you are, and if you're starting out, globular clusters, great way to start. You can, planetary nebula, many planetary nebula tend to be bright. They tend to be small as well, but there are a lot of good bright planetary nebula out there. And then if you are going the narrowband route, then emission nebula. And you have a lot of emission nebula to choose from. Really, when it comes to emission nebula and narrowband filters, that's really where they're going to shine, and that's, I think, the beauty of getting it all out, getting all that signal out of light polluted skies. I always knew that I wanted to photograph emission nebula. I love emission nebula. It's just kind of always what I had envisioned when it came to Astro Images. And at the same time, being in a light polluted sky, I fear galaxy season, because galaxies are just so difficult, especially given my sky conditions. They tend to be brighter than emission nebula. There's just no great way to filter it out. And even with a light pollution filter, and even with time, I'm still trying to hone my skills when it comes to that. So I've kind of already gone over acquisition, what you want to do in acquisition between using your filters. Monochromatic is a good way to cut through it, mostly because of the signal-to-noise ratio benefit and the fact that you're going to accumulate that signal quicker. If you're imaging from light-polluted skies, your sublengths are going to be shorter, but your overall integration time is going to have to be longer. So even though you're taking lots and lots of short subs, you are going to be, instead of taking an hour image or an hour-long image, you might be 15 hours. And I find myself taking 15, 20-hour images these days. And that's becoming the norm for me, which I wouldn't have anticipated, but I'm also chasing a particular look in my images. So I tend to not stop until I'm happy with that particular channel that I'm working on, and a lot of the times it keeps me going, especially 03, where I'll find myself with a lot of time in on it. H-alpha filters cut through the light pollution and moon a lot better than 03 filters, and at the same time, when you're buying your filters, the narrower the pass that they are, the better light pollution rejection they will have. H-alphas, the Astrodons, go down to 3 nanometers. Well, I shouldn't say that. All of the Astrodons go down to 3 nanometers. H-alpha, O3, and S2, and I believe even the N2. He also offers them in 5 nanometers. And in almost all cases, it's better to go narrower. The only exception I'd say is that since H-alpha is slightly more resilient to light pollution, I think there's a tendency for people to try the 5 nanometer H-alpha so that they're not splitting out the N2 component, and that seems to be a motivating factor for a lot of people. Either that, or all you need is a little bit of motivation to save $300 over what the more expensive 3 nanometer costs, especially after you're spending all that on all the other filters. So narrower filter is always better when it comes to light pollution. If you're shooting narrowband, and I actually want to go back to my image to give you a little demonstration of what tends to happen. Now you can see my cave nebula, and the brighter signal areas I was able to get, and if you can't see, just cut me off. The brighter areas you could see, I was able to get fairly noise free, and I'll even go in there. Now I've done some sharpening on this. I've done noise reduction on this. I've done a lot of processing on this. So as I blow it up, it is going to kind of fall apart. But when I bring it back out, you can see in this low signal area here on the left, the bottom left, the signal does disappear into the background a little bit. It's a little bit gritty, and I've just noticed that in dark areas, it's really hard to get the noise out of there in light polluted skies. I brought my narrowband filter to my darker site, and I got some great shots. But I had also noticed that during the full moon, that luminance that the moon is giving off just materializes as noise in the darker areas, and it forced me to do further noise reduction. That I'll say, if I hadn't done it, would probably have preserved a little bit more of the detail, but at the same time, it needed to be done because I needed to do something with that particular region. This is a full narrowband image. So whereas this cave nebula is an H-alpha RGB image, this wizard is a full narrowband, and this is H-alpha 03. So I didn't have to shoot any RGB for this particular image, and the benefit of that is just RGB is so much more RGB is so much more affected by light pollution than any of the narrowband filters that if I can avoid it, it makes it that much easier. So with my cave nebula, I really ended up blurring my RGB a lot, and I also incorporated my red channel into the my H-alpha channel into my red channel, and used a significant amount of my H-alpha channel and my red channel to help me get that detail. And that's really what ended up pulling out the detail. And I said I fear galaxy season. This is an M51 that I took, and every time, no matter what I try, and first of all, I love this image. I think this is a great image of mine, but I was never able to get the background to my satisfaction. And even now, it has a grittiness that I, for some reason, can't get rid of. And I always go back to this and try reprocessing it, but it either ends up kind of gritty or kind of mottled, like an orange peel look. And that's just the effect of light pollution. Light pollution just shows up as noise in an image. And you can do a lot of things. I think you get better and better and better at processing it out, but I think the best thing you can do is at some point drive to darker skies and enjoy how dark the skies are, because you're going to love your images. In processing, what do you do to get rid of light pollution? Well, I think pretty much the basic thing you're going to do is its gradient removal. In PixInsight, you're going to use DVE. In Photoshop, you might use Gradient Exterminator, but that's pretty much the basics of it. I've been asked the question, how do you remove light pollution? And I don't think you actually remove light pollution. I think you actually color balance through it, and it's affected the contrast of your image, but you're really just color balancing through it and accepting the fact that your image has lost that contrast, and hoping that you can rework that contrast in post-processing if you have high enough signal to noise in the image. In regards to RGB imaging, you can use your RGB. Okay, first of all, typically what one would do in RGB imaging is they take a luminance with their luminance filter, and then they would take their R, their G, and their B channels and combine them together. More recently, I see a lot of people not taking the luminance image and only using the RGB components, and then taking a synthetic luminance from that. And they do that for a number of reasons. The luminance will be better matched up to the brightness levels of the RGB, but the RGB filters have a gap where the light pollution exists, and that gap doesn't get taken advantage of if you're using the luminance. If you take the synthetic luminance from the RGB, you get to take advantage of that, and that is that's a big advantage to take advantage of. If you line up the spectral curves of the light pollution filters, you'll see that the IDAS behaves a lot like the RGB filters from Astrodon, so to speak. Astrodon's RGB filters have a sharper cutoff than the Beters, and I think that's why they're a little bit more sought after or considered a little bit better. That is the basics of my discussion. In fact, that's pretty much all of it. So what I'll do now is I'll open it up. I see a lot of chat in there, so I'm going to go back through and read it. But if anyone has any initial comments, they're welcome to chime right in. And I'm just going to read a few things here. Alex pointing out interference issues with very fast telescopes. And I've heard that, but I don't know what the alternative is. What do you do if you have a very fast telescope and you want narrowband filters? Do you just go to a wider filter?
What happens is that if you have a 3 nanometer bandpass and you've got a very wide if the focusing cone, the light cone, is very wide and short, which is what you get with the fast focal ratio telescope, then it tends to shift the actual band that it's focusing on. So instead, what is it supposed to be? 656 point something? It'll be 650 whatever, just a little bit further on up or down, I forget. Yeah, as somebody has pointed out, I think there's an article on Goldman's website about it. But I don't want anybody to be real worried about this. In fact, it doesn't show up until 3.5 faster than that, and most of us aren't imaging at 3.5 and faster than that. Maybe with a hyperstar or something like that, and I really don't know. I talked to Don, and he said, "Yeah, you're cool with all your equipment. I've got F4.5, I guess, is as fast as I ever work with." And he says, and really, what it does is it shifts the focus of the bandpass. It shifts which band is actually getting through. And who is it? Robert? No, it was Josh. Who was it that said that it's the interference issue? That was Josh that said that. Josh, is that a different way of saying what I said, or is that a different phenomenon?
Yeah, that's what you said. You know, some people actually, when they're imaging stuff that is further back in time, stuff that's, you know, more like 100 million light years away or 200 million light years away, it's kind of the same thing where it gets redshifted, so it falls out of that super narrow 3 nanometer bandpass, and so basically the filter is interfering with the hydrogen alpha coming through, which is the same way of saying what you're saying, where you're not getting the full amount of hydrogen alpha coming through that you would expect to under normal conditions.
Hydrogen alpha is no longer at 656.
Exactly.
Is what they're saying. In your case, you're saying that hydrogen alpha from a very distant object is no longer at, is it 656? Somebody fix that in my brain if it isn't, if it's something else. But I was saying something different, is that the bandpass that's actually allowed through has been shifted from 656 in a fast focal ratio scope. But again, it's more interesting as a piece of trivia to most of us than it is as a useful piece of information, because most of us don't have scopes that are running at 3.5, 3.3, stuff like that.
And even at that point, you're still getting a high transmission rate. You're just going from like 90 to 95% down to 80 or 85% at f2. So it's not like you're not getting any transmission.
The other comment that we had earlier was the Android people were apparently rising up in rebellion of some sort, but what can you expect from them? No, that was not nice. There's a dark sky meter app in the iPhone, and I thought it was really cool because I'm too cheap to actually go buy a dark sky meter, and it works virtually the same from what I've been told as the dark sky meter that you can spend, what is it, 129, 189, whatever it is, and it gives you the numbers that you were talking about from Samir earlier, what your limiting magnitude is in the sky and your flux and whatever that stuff is. And so I was real proud of it. And so at our start party the other day, I said, hey, guys, come here, look at this, look at this, look at this. And I was showing them, and all I kept getting was invalid, invalid, invalid. And apparently it used to work until they went up to iOS 8. And once they went to iOS 8, it broke. But they didn't tell me before I walked out there and said, hey, come here, look what my iPhone can do. And apparently they're going to fix it by mid-October is what they're saying. But it really does work. You point it, you calibrate it, and then you point it up in the sky, and it says, oh, you're at 21.8 tonight. So it's kind of cool. Okay, that was that.
Yep.
So, Adam, I think to further kind of extend your point about how you can expose in light pollution and maybe more of the advantages of narrowband filters are that you actually need to build up your signal, and if you're shooting with just RGB filters or just one-shot color, that you actually can't build up your signal that much before the sky noise overwhelms the read noise. But when you're shooting with these narrowband filters, it's what we just talked about before this, you can, well, at least with my HA filter, even at half-hour subs, my sky noise is still not overwhelming the read noise, so I can continue to build up signal, which is something that you cannot do with the RGB, because you're just going to blow out your entire image at that point. So
using SGP's recommended exposure time, my 3 nanometer narrow bands recommended exposure is something like, from my home, which is in suburban LA, is something like an hour and 14 minutes. So that's what it would take to get up to that sky glow level, according to SGP.
Has anyone ever seen infinity pop up on there? You ever get a blank exposure and see infinity pop up? I saw it pop up, and it was spelled out. I thought it was funny that they programmed that in there to say infinity at some point. But
yeah, I still haven't figured out how to do that for SGP yet, though.
I think
for next week for Alex's presentation.
I think it's just the gain setting.
Okay, first off, let me tell you about my presentation. I think it's on the 19th. If it's next week, I got problems. But we're anticipating on the 19th, correct? And it's not so much about SGP. It's not a here is how you use SGP step by step. It's more along the line of, here are the concepts involved with automating a session. Here are some programs that do it. Here are some choices between those programs regarding cost and what they can do and stuff like that. And now, here is how I did it with SGP. I don't think it would be good to just spend that time. I don't want anybody thinking that I'm going to spend an hour or so, 40 minutes actually, on SGP itself. It's going to be on the whole idea of automating your session. Secondly, to answer your specific question, it's really easy to do as long as you've got your equipment set up right. Over in your equipment profile under camera, you'll notice that there's a couple, in SGP, for those who are familiar with it, there's a couple of boxes you have to fill out. The gain of your camera and what else is there? What else is it called? I don't have SGP on this computer. I could look it up. But there's two elements you have to define, and once you've defined it, it's automatic. It comes up from that point on. Yeah, as soon as you go to, is it image statistics that has that information? It's one of those things that's like, after you've done it a while, you forget where everything is. It just works. You just know to click on something and it comes up. So, does that make sense?
Yep. I'm looking on mine. I don't even see. I don't have it set up on this particular profile.
Okay. Look under. See, I'm not imaging.
Is it the read noise then also?
Pardon me? Yeah,
The
that's
read
the other.
noise?
That's the other. It's the read noise and gain. If you
Okay,
define
yeah.
the read noise and gain for your camera sensor, and you can either look it up in your manufacturer or there are ways to figure that out. That's all you have to do. That's you put those two factors in, and it'll compute it for you whether you ask for it or not. It's always just sitting there waiting for you.
My SGP is in recovery mode right now. I think it got cloudy.
So now, can you? I'm sorry if this is a little off topic. In SGP, if you were to pull up one of your images that you put in there, would it be able to tell you that information or no?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think so.
Hold on. You see that? You see?
Right.
Bye, sequence. Don't, you'll turn the cooler off. Oh, bye.
I think it's going to be cloudy for the rest of the day. So I don't have it set up in this particular sequence, but you're asking if let me see, can I do it from here?
Yeah, that's where.
Readout noise is set. Oh, my gain is set. I don't know why it's not showing up. Normally it would show up ideal exposure time right here.
Yes, because I just did that for mine. You know, I got the gain set and all that stuff, and I pulled up an image that I had done previously, and the ideal image time, it says NA.
Had you set your times beforehand?
Oh yeah. I had
Meaning
this
they've been
before I
set for a
started it.
while, back
yeah.
when the image was first acquired.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
I must have something
Under
messed
image
up then.
statistics?
I'm
Did you
sorry?
do that? Is it under image statistics? I don't actually use that function much because I image the same setup every time almost. So, you know, I know that I'm going to go for half-hour exposures on all my narrow bands and 12-minute on all my Ls and so forth. So I don't bother getting the ideal each time.
Yeah, I was just wondering because I know this is a 30-minute HA sub, so I wasn't sure if I were to pull it up, you know, from previous, if it would show that ideal exposure time. That's all. That's what I was wondering. I apologize.
Well, I tell you what. Click on a dark sky area of the image, and well, you're going to have to look this up someplace or somehow cheat on it. But every camera has an ideal sky glow floor, and for my QSI, it's 1300. For my, what was that? An ST7, I think, was, if my memory serves me right, it's 750. But you can look it up someplace, or I'll tell you a different way to get it if you don't have it that way. But and just, it's a ratio. If you click on a dark part of your image, okay, Adam, could you pull up an image and click on the dark part of the image so we can see what the ADU is on that particular image? Just any old image, that one for instance. Okay, see down at the bottom where I is 3363. Okay, go to a black part of the sky there. See where it's 3031? Okay, use that number. That number's got an ideal in a dark sky. On my QSI, it should be 1300.
Yeah,
well,
this actually just got cloudy, so if I go, this is a better sub, and we're at 1594. That's about average for me.
Okay, so you see where his intensity is at. If this were on my camera, and it were at 1531, I want it to be at 1300. So this is overexposed for my camera. It's overexposed by a ratio of 15 to 13. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay, so all I need to do is, if that were a 15-minute exposure, I could back it down to 13 minutes, and I would have the ideal background exposure. Now, I said that you could look up what that ideal number is. They don't all list it, but there's an easy way to find out. you know, Star Arizona, CCD Autopilot, various places, or even SGP, you can figure out what that number should be for your particular camera by telling them that, you know, you've got a SBIG 8300, whatever that would be, and you just took a 5-minute exposure, and it's telling you should have taken a 7-minute exposure with that particular ADU. Well, then you know that the ideal number is 7/5 of the number you actually got. That's how you can figure out what your magic number is if you don't already know it. It makes sense to me. How did it do with you?
No, I understand. I just got to look
Okay,
at the information. Cool. That's all. Thank you very much.
I had another point that I was meant to bring up as well, which is one thing that I used to have a lot of issues with. I live about 4 miles south of Pittsburgh, and so in the whole south end of my sky is completely blocked by my house, so I'm always shooting north directly into Pittsburgh. So every image that I shoot has one half of the camera, you know, a pretty strong gradient of light pollution from one side to the other. And I used to struggle a lot where I would shoot a lot of stuff, then flip the meridian, then shoot a lot of stuff on the other side. Then I would get these weird gradients coming in from both sides of my pictures once I stacked them together. And I always had a lot of issues with processing them that way. So one thing that I started working on maybe like 4 or 5 months ago was only imaging single color channels from one side of the meridian flip, and just making sure that I stick with that. And then if I flip the meridian, then I would flip what color I was doing. Then it would be a lot easier on that independent color channel to actually get rid of that gradient, rather than having what was weird, kind of a curtain coming in on both sides that wasn't perfectly even and sort of a little darker in the middle. And would just get some really weird effects, especially if the camera wasn't perfectly oriented at 0 degrees. So that was something that helped me a lot also when shooting in light pollution.
Has anybody tried removing the gradients at all the subs before combining them to alleviate the very problem you were just talking about?
Only per channel for me.
Only per channel. Yeah, that's, well, you mean you would get all your reds?
Correct.
Gradient, or remove the gradient and all your reds and then combine the reds?
No, I would combine the reds and then get rid of the gradient before making an RGB image.
And I'm thinking, as whoever that last speaker was, what he was saying was that as you know, it's one side or the other kind of thing. And maybe what I really should do is remove the gradient from after it's calibrated, remove the gradient and then combine, so that if I've got a gradient coming one way when the scope's pointed that way, and then a gradient coming from the other way when the scope's pointed the other way. Anybody ever tried that?
I'm not sure how other people process. Typically, I do sort of very early in the processing, and then I do 1 or 2 softer gradient removals later on in the processing. So it feels like it almost kind of re-emerges a little bit towards the end. I'm not sure if PixInsight does a better job of getting rid of it than Gradient Exterminator, but I feel like if I get rid of too much of it at the very beginning, then I don't have my full detail on my nebulas, for example. So I kind of do a coarse one at the beginning and then finer one at the end. I'll let Adam speak. Maybe I think he uses PixInsight.
Yeah, with my RGB, I've had the best luck doing DBE on an RGB image as opposed to each channel at a time. Whenever I did a channel at a time, I had trouble getting it to remove the gradient in a way where it didn't give me like kind of that rainbow effect of different luminances from each channel. And I think it does split the channel when you do DBE anyway. So I think it actually like does that in a smarter way. I was never able to do my DBE separately and have acceptable results in my mind. That's not to say I wasn't doing something wrong, but that's what I noticed. With narrowband, I rarely do gradient removal. no, because I combine enough of it where I get most of my luminance from it. I rarely ever have to do it. But in regards to doing it in a couple steps, yes, I usually start with, if it's RGB, I start with DBE, and at the very, very end, usually I have it out in Photoshop. I'll sometimes finish it with Gradient Exterminator, sometimes just define high. It really just depends on what it needs. But it's best to get a lot of it, like the large portion of it dealt with early on, because it makes processing impossible. So, but that's been kind of my experience.
Be interesting to try, though. I mean, you have to remove it somewhat if you use anything like Excalibrator. Otherwise, it won't give you very accurate results. So I always do, at least a run before I put all my channels together, at least. It'd be cool to try it before even stacking them. I don't know if that would help or not.
Yeah, the difficult thing is each frame is going to have a slightly different gradient. So when you do try and do the gradient removal before stacking, it might, unless you're doing perfect gradient removal in each image, then it might leave like some sort of residue. I mean, it's probably the best way to do it, but it's probably close to impossible. At least that's kind of my thinking on it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I'm afraid to touch my images or my subs much before I stack them, besides a hot pixel rejection per sub or something like that.
All right. Anyone else have any comments or topics on light pollution? You're welcome to bring it up. In the meantime, I just want to jump out and check comments and make sure we didn't miss anything or have anyone stuck, unable to get in. Nope. All right. I know.
Put out, Adam, I apologize. Was the image here I put in chat? I know what you mean by fighting the orange peel effect. Even though I use an IDAS with my filters, because like Josh, I can only image north, or like east, west, and north, and that's it. But you can see the orange peel effect no matter how many times I tried doing it, and you can see the purplish coloring off to the right side there, and through the middle actually. But yeah, it was some of these images I've been having a major issue with trying to fight with. It's my processing too, but at the same time, it's working with that.
Yeah, I'm coming to the realization that a lot of this noise that I've been dealing with is actually light pollution. And a year ago, 2 years ago, I was thinking, oh, well, I just need to get a lower noise camera or this or that, or get the cooled CCD. And now that I have that, I realize that it's just that light pollution materializes itself as noise. It just looks like noise, just looks like ugliness in the background of your images, and it cuts your dynamic range. So, I mean, that's what noise does too. So, and when you have excessive noise, you only have your noise reduction tools to get rid of it, and it just kind of changes the form. So it gets rid of that graininess, but you get the orange peels.
Yeah, I've also
Robert,
seen
what
that.
do you use for process?
I'm sorry?
What do you use for processing, Robert?
PixInsight.
Oh, okay.
I also noticed that with the noise, or with the light pollution, I also tend to over-process. As you can see with that, the stars were burnt on it.
I imagine it, well, obviously it won't help you much in Photoshop and the Astro tools. There's a color blotch reduction tool. I'm not sure exactly manually what it's doing, but it actually takes good care of images that have the effect that you're doing there. And I used to see that a lot with my DSLR too before moving to CCD for whatever reason. It may have to do with light pollution in combination with the noise typical of the DSLR.
I'll probably go back and reprocess it because I did a couple of, or found a couple of other techniques to try. I just haven't gone back to do it because I was working on my 4-panel Californian mosaic that I finally finished.
I'm just looking. I see
There's,
some that
there's,
weather on Alex's screen.
yeah, there was.
Oh, that's the dark sky finder.
That's my dark sky. Sky. I'm. See that bluish band up there, Riverside Astronomical Society? That's our home base out in the desert. I've got an observatory out there, and my other one is a little bit further in. Okay, I'm figuring out the screen sharing is kind of weird. Where it says Moreno Valley, which is I guess an orangey zone. Orangey, so not too bad.
And probably drier air. And actually,
Yeah.
I have that in my notes. I don't think I even touched on that, but low humidity and low wind. Best time to shoot from light pollution is with low humidity and low wind. The wind kicks up a lot of dust into the atmosphere, and the humidity obviously just reflects that much more of the light pollution. And so if you could pick the drier days, one of the good things about the winter is get a lot of dry days, so you don't notice a lot of the light pollution.
The air's not glowing with the reflection from all the particulates.
Yep.
If we're finished with light pollution, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Are we finished with light pollution? Anybody got any light pollution processing? Any questions? Who's doing what on the Eclipse?
Well, if it's clear, I'll do wide angle stuff. If it's clear.
What's a wide angle for you? You mean you're going to try to get a bunch of trees and rocks and mountains and then a little moon, or what?
Well, it depends on. Yeah, I guess it's all going to depend on location.
Okay.
I'm going to be staying at home, but it might be just putting the camera on the CG5 and going maybe 100 millimeter on the lens.
Okay. That would have been a good topic for this week.
I hate to ask this, but when is it? When is the eclipse? Is it tonight?
It's the morning of the 8th at 3:45 in the morning for us, so that would be what's that for you guys? That's 6:45 in the morning. I think it hits totality. Anybody know that for real? Because I'm just getting it from my buddies that are telling me. Yeah. Okay. And it's more a West Coast thing. I've got a mountain to the west of me that's about 1,400 feet higher than I am, about a half a mile away, and so it'll actually be blocking out part of the show. So we're thinking of where we can go, maybe even up on top of that mountain to go see, to take our pictures over the suburbs there. But okay.
All right. As always, we're always looking for comments. For presenters. And I know, Josh, there's been some requests to have you show us how to put stars back into images. I'm not going to force you to come on next week, but I think anytime you're ready, I think we're ready.
I was kind of thinking a good strategy might just be to upload a video, another tutorial that kind of goes more into depth into that, and then instead of trying to go through a whole processing run, just kind of go over a couple of the unique, more challenging steps. I don't think that maybe trying to fit everything within an hour makes sense. So,
yeah.
So if I can get that tutorial done in the next day or so, I'm probably 2/3 of the way through it. Then I can kind of go through the highlights of it, and also have the whole tutorial online.
All right. I'm working on a few other possible presenters. I don't want to bring up their names, but I reach out to a bunch of people, and some people respond and some people don't. So we'll see who we get.
What one interesting noteworthy new action that came up today? Warren Keller showed, I think Carboni, was it Carboni's, has a new star shrink tool that looks pretty interesting. Is it Carboni's? Whoever does Gradient Exterminator, not Carboni's.
Croman.
Croman, yeah, Russell Croman, sorry. So new Astro tool that's worth checking out. I think it's a free. I don't know how long it'll last, but there's a free trial version to give it a go. It seemed like it worked pretty well to me. It was a little more hands-on than some of the other star shrink tools or actions that other people provide.
Yeah, I'm gonna check that out. I could use something like that.
Yeah, Warren Keller did about a 10-minute video. I keep saying these names, I can't remember. I think it was Warren Keller, yeah. Did about a 10-minute tutorial on how to use it too, which was pretty cool. Or Ken Crawford, sorry. My name's all over the place. Ken Crawford did a 10-minute tutorial sharing Russell Croman's new action.
Okay, that makes more sense considering the list of characters. I was at an outreach last night at the local mall showing off the moon and all that other stuff like we do once a month. And one of the guys, one of my compatriots, comes up and after razzing us about being on the Astro Imaging channel, said that he's gotten a lot of stuff out of this and that he's really enjoying these sessions. And I just thought, congratulations, Adam. I mean, you do a lot of work for this stuff, and thank you for putting up with all this work. But it does have an effect out there. There are people who do it and listen to it, and they're getting something out of it. Okay?
Actually, I will say the YouTube channel is getting a ton of views. I get a couple subscribers a night emailed into me. I have noticed, and it's just something I've noticed, that when we get the developers of software programs on, they get a lot of views. And I think people, you know, this goes out to anybody who's listening out there who might be developing, but I think people actually want videos from the developers to kind of run them through the programs. And Ghislaine's video is our hottest video by like 3 times. He has like almost 500 views, and I think people just like hearing it from the horse's mouth. So as much as I like talking, that's been successful for us.
And they like being able to interrupt and say, I didn't get that, go over that again for me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the real benefit.
Yeah.
All right, well, I don't know if anyone has any other things they want to bring up.
I'd like to run that test we were running before we went live.
Adam, I got one question for you. You've imaged with an STT, right?
Yes.
All right. So when you're doing that, have you ever have ghosting issues when you're doing bright stars?
I saw a post in the SCT forum.
Yeah, a friend of mine.
You know, when I shoot the Pleiades, I get these blue loops. I've in the past associated it either with my focal reducer or something like that. That's the closest thing I can think of to ghosting. But I would think that a lot of telescopes could have problems on the Pleiades. So I don't know if it's purely. I mean, I can understand that criticism, and I know exactly what they're talking about. But
That's the first time I'd ever seen it.
Pleiades, right?
Yeah, well, no, it's the first time I'd ever seen the ghosting image. You know, where the light comes through, bounces off the mirror, goes back off the corrector plate, and then back down in the mirror and back up into the eyepiece or back into the camera. So that's the first time I'd ever seen that, and so I was just curious if you had ever had that.
I've only noticed it on the Pleiades as far as I can remember, and
Okay.
I've kind of I want to try that with. I was just thinking about that. I actually want to try it with my CCD camera now because I noticed it with the DSLR, and I was using the IDAS filter as well. So it could have been a reflection. It's definitely a reflection. I just don't know where it's coming from. And obviously an SCT with all the mirrors, that's the first suspect with the mirror and the corrector plate. But I saw the post on Cloudy Nights where they're talking about the advantages of disadvantages of SCTs or whatever it is. And I kind of feel like I have to defend the SCT, but I also I know exactly what they mean on that. So
I've got one too, but I haven't done a lot of imaging with it. So
yeah, I'm the odd one out. I'm imaging with mine, and I like it. I'll tell you, the RCs, the AT8 RCs are awesome.
that's why I've been thinking about an RC.
Yeah,
it'd be cool to have one, like an
I
8
like
or
having
8. I don't know if I want to go with a 10, but an 8.
Yeah, I like having a little bit more focal length than the AT8 RCs. If I were to get one, I'd probably be looking at the 10, and then I'd be reducing it down so I'd get a little bit faster. But and then they do the trusses of the 10s too, so then you have a tough decision ahead of you. That gets tough. But yeah, ghosting on SETs.
Yeah, I got ghosting on RCT last year too. I was trying to image the Ghost of Cassiopeia, and the bright star certainly did cause a lot of donuts and just ghosting, jacked up image.
Yeah. And that's on an RC?
It was 8-inch.
So that was probably then coming from whatever field flattener or corrector you were using.
I think that, I mean, I did post it at one point, and it sounded like it was just reflections off the chip, off the field flattener, back onto the chip, off the mirror, onto my sensor.
Yeah, it's hard to blame the SCT purely because who knows what would happen if you took it out of the equation or the whatever it is. But I mean, there's a lot of glass in there.
Yeah.
I've got an 8SC. I want to give it a shot. I haven't. When I first got it, I tried it, but that was just when I had the one-arm bandit, the next star. And since then, I got the 80 ED now, and set the 8SE aside, but now I want to actually put that up on the mount and give that a shot. See what I can do with it.
Yeah.
Haven't done a lot lately, though. The weather isn't really cooperating, and helping a lot of friends out with different projects, so I haven't really been getting a whole lot done.
My clear sky clock has been blue for the last 2 days straight. It's been cloudy for the last 2 days straight, so I don't know what to make of it. I'm trying to image right now. It's cloudy right now, but I guess it's the moon's up there, so it's a good time for it to be cloudy.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like that's the only time it's clear here is when the moon's out.
That's always.
I just pulled up the YouTube version of this, and it appears that there's at least a minute delay between what we're seeing on Google Plus and what they're seeing out on YouTube.
Yeah, we have noticed that before.
Oh, I had never noticed that.
At least a minute.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I noticed the Q&A, a little bit of a delay. I mean, it's workable, but it is what it is.
You have to take that into account, though, because if we get somebody coming in on a question from YouTube, they may be, maybe a while. Maybe a while.
Yeah. Well, we could ask for patience in the beginning, which is probably our best bet. I think that's pretty much the session for today. I see we have some live viewers, but that's we've pretty much covered our topic, and this is all getting stored to YouTube. So I am going to cut out the live broadcast unless anyone has anything to add for the live.
Are you going to hang on so that I can see if I can...
Yeah, I wanted to do this before we tested your screen, Alan.
Oh, yeah, sure.